Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. I am Connie Mitchell. I'm the Executive Director for IHS, the Institute for Human Services, and I'm your hostess for this session. And I just wanted to remind everyone that there will be an opportunity to evaluate the session. And how you do that is you go to the website of the conference and look in the area for evaluation. It's also the way that you will have your CEUs, your continuing education units. So you have to evaluate the session in order to get it. So we'll get going now. I just want to really thank you for joining us. I'm just real pleased to introduce Anna Mays. She is an educator, author, and she is the author of a book called Saved by Zero, a transformational trauma narrative. And I actually met Anna not that long ago, just last year, and I had a chance to read her book, and it was just, it moved me deeply. And I knew that this lady is the real healer. So I just, in the process, invited her to be a part of our programming at one of our shelters out at Sand Island. And we're going to be sharing a little bit about that experience and the model, of healing that she's using out there. Anyway, in her book, it's really an account of her own trauma and how she turned that into an opportunity to help other people in situations of recovery, homelessness, domestic violence, and incarceration. She's an education practitioner. She has advised on criminal justice reform and offender rehabilitation. So she's well familiar with trauma of that sort as well. She's also served as a member of the Governor's Advisory Group for the restoration of the Native Hawaiian wellness system called Honua. Currently, she's coaching residents and staff using a cultural, trauma healing informed social health approach for Halemaliola Navigation Center. So Anna, take it away.
Hi, thank you, Connie, and welcome everyone. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to be here to share the wonderful healing that's going on at Halemaliola. And I thank you, Connie and IHS, for the opportunity to be out with the staff out at Halemaliola and to be a part of the Ohana. Our session today is Call Them to Help. And the title comes from an indigenous practice of calling the spirit back to the body to health when it becomes disconnected. We are working on engaging intuitive intelligence in people to help them to resolve the trauma in their life and to begin the work of problem solving. So I will move forward. I want to let you know what we're going to be covering today. Stay with us through this time and space. Our conversation is going to start with the concept of Honolulu. We are addressing trauma from a cultural perspective. So it's appropriate for us to begin to speak about the social health concept of Honolulu to get the conversation going. And actually, this is a continuation of a conversation that has been going on in our state regarding persons of high risk, specifically Native Hawaiians, but all people are Hawaiian in Hawaii. And I'll get to that in a little bit. And then I want to talk to you a bit about what we're doing at Halemaliola and the approach that is developing through the project that we are implementing in this service. And then I will go to sharing some of the benefits that I am seeing and that some of the residents or the Ohana out there are sharing that they're getting from this service. And then I want to touch on a little bit about what are the implications for such an approach like this in working with persons who are chronically homeless. And not to lump them all together, it's just where we are right now in implementing the project, but the persons that are out at Halemaliola that are experiencing or expressing their trauma, have backgrounds in domestic violence, there's incarceration or formerly incarcerated, persons who are in recovery or have had addiction, substance misuse, co-occurring substance misuse. Its dynamic is severe and persistent in their life. And so I believe this would be something that we can apply as a modern social health practice. So that's what we will cover in this session in the next 45 minutes, and then we'll be open to question and answers, but feel free to ask any questions along the way that you may have. Okay, that's what our conversation will be today. As I said, it really is about a conversation that has been going on about Honolulu and about keeping this conversation going. The opportunity to be able to apply it now in the modern context at Honolulu and specifically in addressing the chronically homeless is really relevant to the act or the law that was passed back in 2011. The champion of that law was Renwick Valentine, Ili Puna Tassel, or better known to us as Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe had a school in the 70s called Ho'oponopono on the Big Island. And that school was addressing the health of at-risk youth. And it was very near to the Pupuhonua on the Kona Coast, Honolulu. And they were able to connect the children to culture, their roots, their principles, values, and practices. And it was very successful, supported and funded by Kamehameha schools. Uncle Joe never let go of that. And then in 2010, he was able to get legislation going, and then the act passed in 2011 and signed into law. And in 2012, we were able to have a summit regarding Pu'uhonua and what were some of the contexts that Pu'uhonua could be reestablished today. And specifically, we were first talking about the population of the incarcerated and addressing the long-standing concern about the disproportionate numbers of Native Hawaiians in the criminal justice system. But if you notice there, I have put on my slide that within the context of this law, the legislators found also that unquestionably many high-risk persons need to be cared for in a much more sensitive intervention program that will alleviate their problems. So that will include persons that are chronically homeless, houseless, those that are in domestic or intimate partner abuse situations, and onward. So today I am going to share with you really a much more sensitive intervention program that we are developing out at Honolulu. And this really comes from what I call Kupuna vision. So Uncle Joe's vision before he left us to transition to be with the ancestors was a vision for him that he received and I recorded. And it has to do with using mele to explore identity. And so as he was sharing, he was explaining that these few songs were actually tied to the process of when a person enters Honolulu, what would be the first steps in the process of restoring their health. So the three songs really relate to that process. So let's go forward and look at what that is going to be. Before we begin the conversation about how we will translate or transmute the mana'o, the understanding of pu'uhonua in modern context, we have to have a very basic understanding of what we're saying when we call a place or a modern context a pu'uhonua. And you see on the slide here, I placed a visual, a graphic there of ancient Hawaiian watershed, the sustainable watershed system called Ahupua'a. And we cannot speak about pu'uhonua without understanding what this meant in ancient times. Of course, the Ahupua'a, the local districts have all changed. And so we have to take that into consideration too. But the foundation is still there. The concepts we can adapt. Having a place or wherever we are, I am particularly from the Ahupua'a area, and it has changed the time that I've lived there. It's changed quite a bit from a plantation community to now more of a thriving urban community. But some things are still the same in these places. This is what I want us to consider. How do we create this? And really, it's much more about three relationships that were in balance between the individual and that ahupua'a, the land, and the people, and the things. So I placed there for you to see in ancient times what this meant when we say people. And we can look at this and we can still see that we still have these relationships to ourselves first, our family, our elders, or those we look to as leaders, even those who are, at the top, our governor, legislators, persons like Connie herself at a organization that is working to assist Ohana in the community, and so forth. Ancestors are included in that because we still receive our wisdom. We can look back and look at how things were, how we have a lot of publication about that knowledge, and we can use that knowledge to help us today to make this transition. Places, we still have homes. When we're thinking about hale or homes and the relationships that go on inside the home. Hale, the village, or the situation of those individual homes and what went on in each of those homes are hale. For example, when you go to work, your relationships are very different from when you're at home. Or when you go to a hospital, the relationships you have there are very different, and so forth. And I mentioned the Ahupua'a, where I grew up. We need to consider that too. What are resources and sources within each of those places, those townships, cities that we have? In every district, moku. Now we're getting to the level that is political and legislative. So we need to consider that as well when we're talking about the bigger picture, Mokopuni Island, ancestral sites. How do these come into play to help people to heal and have help? And then things, the relationships to, we live in Hawaii. Hawaii is a beautiful place because we are situated in the middle of the ocean and water, and we have the opportunity to be outside and having relationships with the land, with our plants and animals, everything specific and unique here. Looking up into the sky and looking at the clouds, we can understand, what it means to keep ourselves healthy and well. So we have a unique opportunity here by interacting with natural and the non-natural. Today, what does the non-natural world mean? This technology that we're using right now to create a relationship between each other, sharing what we know, our knowledge, being able to see my face and back and forth. What are our artifacts and what are our ceremonies? These things are important, very important. to developing Honolulu in modern contexts. And then, as I mentioned, the Ahupua'a, where I grew up. We have the opportunity to be outside and having relationships with the land, with our plants and animals, everything specific and unique here. Looking up into the sky and looking at the clouds, we can understand, what it means to keep ourselves healthy and well. So we have a unique opportunity here by interacting with natural and the non-natural. Today, what does the non-natural world mean? This technology that we're using right now to create a relationship between each other, sharing what we know, our knowledge, being able to see my face and back and forth. What are our artifacts and what are our ceremonies? These things are important, very important to developing Honolulu in modern context. So let's see how we are doing it now. Melee, backing up, I said that Joe had a vision of 3 songs. And these 3 songs are very important to a person's identity. The 3 songs are from Israel Kamaka'i'ole. And I'm sure that being in Hawaii, we're all familiar with these 3 songs. And that's what I really like about it, is that when I play these 3 songs, you know, to the ohana out at Haleʻiʻaliʻola, I mean, it just connects us all. Mele connects us. And that's important to identity. So the 3 songs are Hawaiian like me. This is helping us to explore who I am. Somewhere over the rainbow is helping us to explore why I am here. And starting all over again is getting us to explore where I belong. Who I am, why I am here, and where I belong. Those are the 3 inquiries of health that we are asking a person to look within themselves and without, externally as well in their environment, to rediscover, reconnect, realign with who I am and where I'm from. This is what creates health. What I want to emphasize about that when we're talking about Hawaiian culture, and just read to you that in Hawaiian culture, to speak about a healthy life presumes being eho kanaka. Kanaka means a person of word. Word was answering these 3 inquiries, basic inquiries of health. If a person is unable to answer these 3 inquiries of health, then they are lost. When you're thinking about from a Hawaiian cultural perspective, then they're lost. They're homeless, and they are disconnected from a very spiritually and physically sustainable way of living. So I will get to why we are addressing these very basic areas of health in a few minutes, but just to set it up. Now I'm going to talk to you now a bit about what we are doing at Haleʻiʻaliʻola. And it really is a blessing. I can't, it's hard to put to words when you ask what is going on and what are the benefits that you see out there. It's hard to quantify that. We're working, this is ohana, and we're working with people. It's much like if you were in your own home, you have challenges within relationships. And you have roles, responsibilities. Everyone works with, to make that home successful. And so when you're in the home, they address them and the best you can in everyone because it impacts everyone. And when it's addressed, then everyone is celebrated. So the idea for Halau o Maliola actually came from a staff member at Haleʻiʻaliʻola as he was watching the out there learn to hula, learn to dance, learn to use and connect to their body intelligence. So we love the name, and so we decided to keep it Halau o Maliola. The longhouse is a meeting place for indigenous cultures that use the canoe and also dance as ceremonial artifacts, traditional culture, or ceremonial traditional culture came together in what we call a longhouse as a meeting place. So we meet at the Central Hale out at Haleʻiʻaliʻola. What goes on there now is exactly that. we are building a canoe, and I am going to share with you what that's all about. It's a metaphorical canoe, but we are building one. And we are also practicing ceremony through learning hula. So the team for the Canoe Family Navigators is myself, and I deliver the coaching classes on Wednesdays from 11 to 12:30, and I am their trauma healing coach. So my part is to prepare the spiritual mindset. Monday night, we both go out, and she prepares the physical mindset. And I'll get into that a little bit more what that means. That's our team for Canoe Family Navigators. So if you remember earlier, I spoke about why we are continuing this conversation about Honolulu, and that the legislators also found that it would be an appropriate fit for other high-risk populations that we believe is sensitive for them, and to help them to alleviate their problems. And so when we began to develop this, it's very comprehensive. It's very comprehensive. There's processes and steps for a person as they enter and they go through, and then they are released. So the process, as I sat on this advisory board, I was able to statewide listen to many practitioners, and I can safely say that we all agree that the practice of ho'oponopono is essential to the processes at Honolulu, just as essential as it is to living in the opportunity to life in times. Ho'oponopono, practice of ho'oponopono kept everyone aligned, everything in balance, and all the relationships in harmony. So Hana is the first step in the whole process. Hana is we put problem identification. Uncle Joe said that this is how he explained it. Hana is to prepare one from a physical and spiritual mindset through fasting, prayer, and meditation to be able to accept everything that's going to be presented to them, to help them, in a sense, identify their problem and alleviate the problem. To begin to do that, we cannot begin to move a person to health until they are able to see what it is that separated them from health. Excuse me. And remember, health from a cultural perspective has to do with people, places, and things. Separation from these things. Okay? The Navigators Clubs, the spiritual mindset preparation is what I do on Wednesdays, and we have 3 new family navigator clubs, now called simply the Navigators Clubs. There's 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. And I really want to align what we would be developing with Honolulu and the programming there. Also, with the hopes to have some sort of, as the clinical director there, Jerry Coffey says, we're trying to find the appropriate community of consciousness. So I really was taking that into consideration in developing this project out there. So I meet again once a week with them on Wednesdays. So the 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days, there are 4 1-hour trauma healing coaching sessions, and then a half hour following for debate. So then we go on Monday and we have what we call a Latino for trying to connect the Ohana out there with their body intelligence. Backing up a little bit, the Navigators Club is really trying to engage their intuitive intelligence, and as they make the transition to the culture, it is more about having indigenous intelligence. And so all the classes run concurrent to the Navigators Club. So we are really out there interacting with Ohana and being a part of the Ohana community twice a week. We saw that they are learning to engage their bodies, to move their bodies, to connect with the song. It's Papayao, a very appropriate selection by Puma and Lisa, because this song is really about being Hawaiian and understanding after being separated, that long journey, the long road that you've taken, and coming back now after all the experiences that one has, can really see now that they are home in this body first, and home, wherever that is in the community that they will go to. So it was really an appropriate, very appropriate selection of mele and dance for Melissa to choose. And I'm so grateful to her. There's so much healing on. You can see the release of the unresolved energy from trauma just now coming forth, and it's just wonderful to see. So that is our approach. And now I'm going to take you a little bit deeper into the approach to show you how these dynamics are coming together.
Hey, Anna, excuse me.
Yes.
I just wanted to comment that, what strikes me about what you're doing is that in a lot of ways, it's a little bit different from our modern way of doing therapy or, approaching trauma, in that it's usually it's very positive and trying to help people kind of make sense of things, but you're kind of turning it on, saying, okay, what's in there? Because the trauma has impacted people definitely in all those ways. Their sense of belonging. A lot of them have physical energy that is blocked by the trauma that has occurred to them. So then their physical is very much impacted. And so it just, it's a beautiful way to just kind of release a lot of that and really address the multiple layers of what people have experienced in their trauma. And so I just was, the kind of the difference, of the way that we approach things. A lot of times when we're looking at it from a cultural perspective, versus something that is more, the modern way that we do about efficiency. Just really, what's the results right away? But this is a process, and it's so evident in the way.
Yes, thank you, Connie, for that. That reminds me. My thought, having gone through this myself, my experience with this, I understand that it's not easy for folks who have experienced trauma and have continued to live with the unresolved energies of the trauma within their bodies, and how that is being expressed in relationships. Many times, like myself too, I cover this in my book, the relationships that I was creating was really about trauma bonding and, trying to reenact without the renegotiation of that, not having the tools yet. So having this understanding, I really was very mindful about developing, starting with Pupulu Punuhana. That was a great consideration. just to start with that little piece, because I'm always concerned about overwhelm. And also big too on this, of course, safety and trust. How do I call? This is about, remember, calling a person to health versus prescribing for them what is health. I really am presenting something where they can come and inquire. It's really important to answer the inquiries of health, even though the question may be, oh, what is this all about? You know, when we just show up, what is this about? That's good. Uncle Joe said this really comes from Eleanor Al, that is really about being able to observe and listen, and then know what are those subsequent questions that you should ask, those inquiries for yourself. So thank you, Connie, for that. It really is a very non-clinical way. It's cultural. It's a cultural responsive way to look at trauma. And that's why it's trauma healing informed. So we're looking at being trauma informed, having that practice, but we are also putting on the other side at the same time what would be something they can choose from their free agency as that as released. Here's something, an option for you. And it's presented the cultural topic. So I am not doing therapy, not showing up as a counselor, but as a coach. And the main difference here, the big difference between the two, therapy, counseling, and coaching. Coaching is about being a cheerleader. It's about looking at you and saying, hey, you can do this, you know, just really, that's not done in the other two modalities, but I'm saying that we really focus on where's the person today. For example, yesterday I went out and the energies from the trauma from Ohana that were attending the class, they came right up to me, and you can hear it. Their language is very incoherent. The mind, you can see the line from a mind that's racing, that's anxious, that's expressing their overwhelm, or else their body language is showing you that they're just about ready to shut down. You know, so but they made it. They came to class. That's really very, very important. And so the first thing I did was to have them do some breath awareness. And then also we did a grounding practice. So being able to see where your where the people are, and then adjusting to that so that they can move forward in the moment, in the present, with what we need to do for the future, but also looking at what's coming with them to the present from the past. But that's something that's very intuitive in nature, less prescriptive and more intuitive when you're applying in the field. So the cultural, yes.
Excuse me, Anna. I just wanted to also comment, one of the things that you mentioned earlier was that we're very much wanting to cultivate more of a sense of community out at Honolulu. And that's definitely kind of a strategy that we're trying to be intentional about, not just there, but, throughout our other shelters as well. But it's really about recognizing how people have got so disconnected when they became homeless. That's just a definition in some ways of being separated from, the physical home that maybe they always knew, from the people that were around them. So some of them have alienated so many of their family members and friends. And then just losing their identity. They don't even know who they are anymore. So much of it all the time. Yes. It just seems like this kind of addresses all of that and fits really well with that intentionality about cultivating community. Because that community, it begins to heal people. when they're
Yes.
within that group, right? Exactly what
Yes.
you said. Uhonua, that sanctuary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I see that out there. I experience that with staff, and we do have staff that comes in and sits in when they're able to, know, um, they are also learning alongside, going through their own coaching uh, as well, and learning the same things that the residents are. So it is really one big ohana out. There's what we are striving for is one big ohana. And I'm just enhancing what is already out there. Um, I see that even within the residents out there, they create that sense of ohana with themselves, supporting one another. And I just want to pick up on that and enhance that more. And so it's just wonderful to go out there and be a part of that ohana. So thank you so much. And I'm glad to hear that so far this is working out to fit. That was the intention. And so part of the coaching is some of the tools that we use as coaching are worksheets. And worksheets are there to help the person to dive deeper within themselves, to really do some reflective work. Also, when you're dealing with trauma, it's very powerful when you get a person to write anything, or to read, to get the mind or the brain using it, using the parts of the brain, the cognitive parts. So, and then also, that part of your brain that feels all the emotions. In trauma, you're always stuck there in the emotions, okay? And then what kicks in is your instincts, right? So you're just going to be reactive. You're going to be hyper or hypo aroused. And what we're trying to do is create a really smooth sailing plan for them, that their window of tolerance increases. And so culture is really Hughes culture, Hawaiian culture. We live in Hawaii, it's Hawaiian culture. There's really a very sensitive, that sensitive interventive modality. It's really easy. Even those persons, not everyone that's attending is of Hawaiian ancestry. They are very open and receptive to receiving and understanding about the place in which they do live in, which is Hawaii, our state, Hawaii. So I am using worksheets, topic worksheets, and here you can see some of the topics that we cover when we are exploring the three inquiries about who I am. We talk about the legal chat, the creation story. Don't go into anything very in depth because, again, I am really watching for the overwhelm. There's so many other things that they have to do or to, they're on their mind, like you said, separation. Family members. To help them realign, yes, I do have a story. I use to focus on that. You have a story too about being here. What is that? And even if it is something that is a result of, your trauma, you can rewrite that story. How do you want to talk about your story? The three people mindset is really much about aligning ourselves, with the past, present, and the future. And so I asked them to do that. What from inside of you, who are you? We just did that yesterday, and I used the bowl of light practice. We get into that in the 90-day a little bit, but I introduce it in the first club. And I asked them on a piece of paper, instead of stone, a piece of paper, I want you now. This is a way for them to gauge their own progress, to build confidence, to show themselves that they are moving forward. That's really important in trauma, to understand that I am healing. I am not staying in the same place. I am healing, even if it is small as being able to write out one belief or one hurtful thing that plays over and over in their mind, to write that out to be able to identify it. Again, this is problem identification. Then to fold it up and put it into my ball of light. And then we're going to talk to them about how to get rid of that later. But so why I am here, we are focusing on our Ohana mindset. What does that mean? How do you function within an Ohana? So helping them to realign with values, principles, and practices, So here we have the call of conduct. How will they conduct themselves, not only in their own place when they wherever they go. If the next step is to a recovery home or to a shelter for women, supporting women, wherever, in their own place, a supported living apartment, whatever it is, there's a standard of conduct where values, principles, and practice will come in, and to understand how to live as an Ohana and to respect others, find the common values, common principles that we share, but also to be able to hold on to. So like you're saying, Connie, these disconnections and separations go as deep as being separated from their values. And when they are able to identify them, the confidence that comes back, the worth. In trauma, I'm looking at the shame. There's a lot of shame going on. And that has to do with your self-esteem and your worth. It's really difficult to undo shame. So to find who you are and to reconnect to your values, what those things are, how to live, helps you to be a person of worth. So then where I belong. So it has much to do with the resiliency and strength. We look at the system on the outside and we look at the system on the inside. We need to have both. We need to have a strong on the inside. And I take them through looking at themselves, as a system within. How do we care for that? How do we make sure that that stays well so that we can, on the outside, continue to make the connections, find the resources that we need, and create the supportive relationships that will give us a sustainable way of living and to live with full up and health or health. The trauma. Yeah.
And I just want to also comment that what I've observed in some of the people that you've worked with is that conversion, just being a victim all the time, and yes. you very empowering approach that you use, because that term that you say, calling people to health, that is something, is an invitation, more than anything else. It's a very gentle way, I think, of helping to move toward healing.
Yes, I like that invitation. It really is an invitation to help. Say, are you ready? We've been will say, are you ready?
Right.
So this is positioning them, to giving them that opportunity to say, I am ready now. See, I like that invitation. I'm running short on time. I believe I'll go through this really quickly. Yeah. So trauma healing, I use exercises. In coaching, we use exercises. So again, like I mentioned, I do breath awareness. I do some grounding techniques with them, and I tie it to the culture. I'm watching for guilt and shame, overwhelm. We go through this. I actually talk to them. I inform them about this, that what's going on within them, so they can identify, is it guilt, is it shame? If it's guilt, we're working with our values. If it's shame, we're dealing with something much more deeper than that. It has to do with belief systems. So I help them. Music is the ways, the healing part. The music, the melee is the positive trigger, to help them to put themselves in positions that are supportive. This, again, that system within. Renegotiation. So if something comes up, and it does, they share, try to walk them through that. Now, what could be the outcome. And then again, I'm tying it to our worksheet and the reflections that they do with the music and more. And how you negotiate yourself through instead of being that trauma. Where do I belong? Mindful awareness is really to be able to stay here. So reality, you know, will I be able to identify that this is not happening to me right now? It's okay. They come in when we invite them in. I want that yes, it's okay for you to be talking like this or responding this way because of what happened to you. Now let's look at what's happening now. Okay? So I'm helping to expand their window of tolerance, expand their tolerance to be able to regulate their emotions and have confidence that they can do that. So again, now social health has to do with the homework. So now we're thinking about not only ourselves, how do we contribute to the health of our families with who we connected, our workplaces, and the social groups we belong to, our community, and so forth out. So we're looking at social health as my responsibility and starting from the inside, reflecting on my health, my wellness is a very sacred place. This body is a sacred place of which the system health is within. Also, if I do, when I do read, wherever I'm at Honolulu Yoga, it is my second chance. Honolulu is a place for second chances to realign again with who you are, your values, your principles and practices, and where you're going and family or whatever it is. How am I going to realign? So it's a chance for you to restore and then to be connected again. Where I belong, was the system again. And we're talking about individuals here, but it really is a much bigger picture than just the individual and where they are going next. Where they are going next is somewhere in a community. And it really, that health and wellness needs to be within the community as well as to raise the awareness of the social practice really permeating through our community, through our state, through our elders, our leaders, people in positions to make decisions about health and wellness. So to support, we're really talking about ending homelessness here. So this is how we are building our canoe. We give you the big picture and how it all comes together in a ra'a. So ohana wa'a, the canoe family, we're building a canoe. Metaphorically, you see across the 6 power seats in the canoe. And if you look at the canoe, each of those seats has a specific duty, responsibility. All of it has to do with communication and strength, resilience, voice, choice, trust, and safety. So you see how we start from the position of trust and safety. Person in the back that is steering usually has the most experience. Who has the most experience with their own trauma but the person who has experienced the trauma themselves? So we are asking them to be the expert about what they need for their own health and wellness. Then we're giving them that voice. Voice is so important to healing trauma and choice. To be able to have a choice instead of just constantly enacting. Then to understand that I have resilience within myself. I have the strength to make this canoe go, to sail and navigate my own journey. I want to share with you the benefits to the chronically homeless. This gentleman, he was in the news in February. He said, go ahead and share my story. But he was one that came through the first iteration of the Canoe Family Navigator Clubs. He went through all 3, And okay, thank you. And he is now in the Latino, and you can see him there to the left dancing. And he has just made tremendous strides to support the staff and what he's doing there. It's just, he's a big part of the community. He actually goes around and gets others to come and join the classes as well. So that's really important. This you can see is a self-assessment that we give them. You can see his own assessment of his progress from the beginning, 30 days, where he feels like he was in the beginning, how aligned he was to his values, principles, and practices. And at the end of the 90 days, where he grows he's more aligned. Challenges, as I said, we had some challenges to get him going in the project. You see there, primarily it has to do with the resident to and continuing to support that invitation to come and be ready for their own healing. The staff would be pulled away from their own sessions, and that's no one's fault. That's just part of what's going on. We have to be ready to adapt to that. We did create an online course for them to help meet the needs of their scheduling and such. So we, in the second iteration, trying to see how that will work for them too. So, just want to say, to call them to help, it takes a whole entire community to take Honolulu and translate that into a modern context. So we all have to ask ourselves who we are, why we are here, and where we belong in the big system of helping others to move from homelessness into a position of health and wellness, and in the grand scheme of things in the system that we are working together to end homelessness. I listed my resources for you. Thank you again for listening to my presentation.
Thank you so much, Anna. We have a few minutes left, and if people do have some questions, we'd love to entertain some questions from the audience. You can do it in the chat on your screen, or I don't know if I can do the Q&A, but do it in the chat if you can. That's probably the easiest. Either way. Are there any other questions that people might have? While you're maybe formulating a question or two, I did want to really encourage people to check out Anna's book. When I read it, it just, like I said, it really moved me. And the fact that she's really coming out of her own story of trauma and sharing that so candidly in some ways, and I think when the folks in her group read it, they really connect because they feel like, oh yeah, she really has been there, and felt that they felt. And so I'm just really thankful that the universe brought Anna to us the way that she did, because it was very much by accident. It's been a real blessing at Honolulu. And it was really kind of somewhat of a coincidence, and I don't believe for the other thing is that Hale Maliola was a need, is really that place that the Housing Navigation Center is at. And, Maliola is healing. And so it's just really amazing how everything kind of came together in this first attempt, making with one of our programs.
Thank you. It's reciprocal, a blessing. I don't believe in coincidence either. So thank you so much.
Well, if does anybody, I want to make sure nobody has any questions. I think she's shared a way of really an invitation for people to heal, a way of people rediscovering their identity, rediscovering their strength. And I so appreciate this this approach, because so much of the work that we do, we're always trying to help people. Oh, you need this or you need that, and we're kind of saying to people what they need. But this is a way for people to identify for themselves what it is that they truly need, also identifying for themselves where did all of their journey to this point in time of being homeless, maybe for years, what are the things that brought them there, that they can kind of reevaluate what it is that they're doing right now. anyway, I think I just want to remind people to also go on the website for the conference to do an evaluation so that you can get your continuing education. And I think that if there's no other questions, we'll just thank Anna again for just really being with us and sharing her mana'o of healing with us today. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.